Hello, you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we celebrate films we think deserve a little bit more love. I'm the host, Josh Hallam. Just me this week as we're tackling another listener's suggestions. As we've said, we're trying to do loads more of your listener suggestions. So if you do want to suggest a film for us to take a look at that you think deserves more love for whatever reason, whether it's underrated or underseen, then drop us an email at filmsandthatpod@gmail.com or drop us a DM on social media. Emails are better though. Tell us your suggestion, a little bit about yourself, think game show introduction, and you can even do it with a voice note if you want. Whilst I've got your attention, if you could head on over to whatever app or whatever it is you're listening to this on, if the option's there, if you give us a little rating and review, it'd be massively appreciated because it helps other people find us. And who knows, maybe they'll get in touch with us and suggest some excellent listener suggestions for us. You can also, as well, if you want, submit A, your listener suggestions via voice note, and B, if you want to use the rating and review to suggest a film for us to do, then you can do so, and we will make those our priority because, you know, two birds, one stone. You'd be helping us out. So yeah, thank you very much. That's exactly what listener Kev did, as he got in touch to suggest Comfort and Joy from 1984, starring Bill Patterson, who younger viewers or people who aren't familiar with him may know him as, I think he plays Fleabag's dad. He's been in loads of stuff. I think he's quite well known for playing, I think he's in Outlander as well. And it's directed by Bill Forsyth, who you might know did things like Local Hero and things like that. So this is what Kev had to say. He said, "Hi Josh, thanks for getting in touch and for deciding to review my suggestion." You're welcome, Kevin. I'm retired and an exiled, only 50 miles away though, Glaswegian, so he's from near the area where the film's set. For me, Comfort and Joy is now a nostalgia piece filmed on location in Glasgow in the early 80s before the city was regenerated. At the time of release, it was exciting to see my hometown on screen, and there was a buzz about Glasgow back then, as there was also a great music scene in the city at the time. It's relatively low budget, and like Bill Forsyth's other films, it's not about belly laughs or big set pieces. It's more about small moments between characters. It didn't change the world, and nobody would say it's the best film ever made, but for me, it's a warm hug which always brings a smile to my face. I walked into Bill Patterson in a bookshop a few years ago, and after apologising and realised who he was, joked that I'd nearly shouted Dickie Bird, that's his character's name in the film if you've not seen it. He was very kind and smiled and said, that dates you to a time and place. All the best with the podcast, Kevin. Thank you very much for that, Kevin. So he doesn't specifically say, why is it underrated or underseen, but I think we can probably assume based off that he's just saying in general it deserves more love. So we'll look at that with the listeners' suggestions. Let's take a look then. So just to remind you of the structure, we do what we liked, or I do what I liked first, the good and then the bad, and then we'll look at the critical reception and we'll decide whether we think it's underrated or underseen. In terms of the plot, it's basically about a DJ who's going through some personal turmoil, loses his girlfriend over the Christmas period, and finds himself inadvertently involved in warring factions of ice cream vans that seem to be sort of trying to take each other's business out and things like that. We'll touch on the plot and the real life links in a little while. What did I think then? So, in terms of going into it, I hadn't even heard of this. I was familiar with with Bill Patterson. I was familiar with Bill Forsyth's work a little bit as well, but hadn't even heard of this one. So it's probably a good bet as to where it's going to go in terms of if it's underseen or whatever. But overall, I enjoyed it. It didn't blow me away. I pretty much agree with what Kevin says there. It's not the greatest film ever made. It didn't blow me away, but it's certainly, I think what Kevin said, it is a warm hug of a film. It's a really low-key story. It's one of those great, real slice of life character-driven pieces, which is, as I've gone on record to say in the podcast before, it's certainly a little bit of me. It's a lot of what's good about British comedy and British filmmaking in general. It reminded me of things like Educating Rita, Shirley Valentine, or even the few films we've done on the podcast like The Parole Officer, or even something like Mike Leigh's Happy Go Lucky, which we did a little while ago. Low stakes, low key, driven by the acting, driven by the characters, like Kevin said, driven by moments between characters. It's probably one of the most naturalistic and low-key films I've seen in terms of how it's delivered and how it's acted. Moving on to the acting, Bill Patterson is the main actor in this. He's the lead in this. He is absolutely excellent. It's all on him. He's got loads to do in terms of he's got all the comedy to do. He's got all the emotion to do. There's some great characters around him, like Patrick Malahide's in this. Very, very young. I almost didn't recognise him, but he is in this. So Bill Patterson's excellent in this. He's charming enough and he's likable enough that you root for him and the radio stuff works and things like that without him being annoying. But he's high up enough that you sort of still laugh at him being brought down to earth a little bit by the absurdity of what he's going through. It's one of those films with running jokes, like the fact that he's really, really proud of his car, and as he goes through it, the car gets absolutely trashed as as it goes along, sort of thing, and that becomes a running joke because it's that whole thing of seeing someone brought down to earth by something. So there's a really nice touch of the surreal wrapped in the regular, which I really enjoyed. I thought that was a really nice thing. I thought it was really nicely done. A lot of great comedy in this, as I've already touched on. There's a lot of absurdity in there in terms of what's actually going on. It's one of those films where you settle into the plot, and every now and then it reminds you what's actually going on, and that is where the comedy lies in a lot of it. And I think the real strength in it as well is that like a lot of comedies, the cast play it completely straight. So there's no winking and nodding, and we know what we're doing here. We know it's a film about, a DJ and rival ice cream brands and stuff like that. Play it completely straight. So those characters, this means a great deal, and that's where the real strength of the film is. I think the real tragedy, I think, of a film like this is that I think we probably need more films like this to keep people engaged in cinema and things like that. Again, that's real good mix of things that I like and I think that are good in British films and British comedy. Slice of life film, that British comedy, that sentiment, that British sentiment, and a strong sense of regional identity. If you think of a lot of the classically great British films, they have such a strong sense of regional identity. Whether it's Billy Elliot, The Full Monty, Brassed Off, Train Spotting, some of the earlier Guy Ritchie films. They've got a real strong sense of identity in terms of the region and where they're from and the people that it's showing. And that this film does that really, really well. And unfortunately, I think in this day and age, these films are now often negated to TV and streaming, and they sort of just get lost. I'm brought to mind of films like Bank of Dave, where back 20 years ago that had been in the cinema and it might have made a nice profit, and it might have made people from that town or that area feel like, oh, that's a little bit of me on the screen up there, and you just don't get it as much anymore. In terms of the dislikes, look, I did enjoy it overall. It's a little slow and a little ambling in places. It's a little dumpty dumpty dump. It kind of comes with the territory because it's so gentle, but because it's so gentle, it really does sort of rumble and amble and ramble on, really. I think perhaps as well we needed a little bit more exposition at the start to show why his life is so rooted by his girlfriend leaving him. I think that would either have injected two things that it could have perhaps needed, which is much stronger emotionality or even just a little bit more comedy. That idea of showing us a before and after. If you think of something like, I don't know, Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz, that I know they're the same team, but what they do really well is they show you the equilibrium and the character status, and then show you why the events of the film uproot it so much. And I really like that. I think that really engages with me, that sort of storytelling. I think that probably needed a little bit more of that here. There's a little bit of controversy in terms of the real world terms as well. I know I touched on this before, but so the film either is influenced by real events or is unlucky in its timing that real events akin to the film happened, and that there was warring ice cream factions and gangs in the area, and people did actually get hurt and I think actually unfortunately pass away. I'm not going to go into it too much, and it was a long time ago, but I know there was some controversy around the film in terms of some people saw it as trivializing real events, and I think Bill Patterson or possibly the director has come on record as saying, oh, maybe it was poorly timed or whatever. I mean, again, because the film isn't a massively known film, and because of the passage of time of sort of 40 years, I haven't been able to fully establish if this was influenced by the real life events or if it was an example of poor timing. Either way, it's just sort of didn't take anything away from it for me, but I just thought it was interesting that there is some interesting reading you can do about the real life events, and I'll say no more than that, because all you'd have to do is look into it and you'd be able to see. Let's move on to talking about the critical reception then. So just to remind you of the structure, we do the IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, audience and critics, and then we average out the scores, and we'll have a little look at the box office as well. So first of all, ratings, second of all, the sort of underseen parts. And ratings wise then, at the time of recording on IMDb, it gets 6.6 out of 10. The audience on Rotten Tomatoes give it 82%, and the critics on Rotten Tomatoes give it 100% from 12 reviews. So that's quite a high score, but it is only from 12 reviews, so it's a little bit skewed there. So that averages out at 8.2 out of 10 or 82%, depending on if you want to go out of 10 or percentage-wise. I would say, those Rotten Tomatoes scores are quite high, but it is really skewed by the fact that it's getting 100% from 12 reviews. Score-wise, I'd say the IMDb score is about right for me. Box office-wise, from what I could see, it made just over £1 million worldwide. I would say it's probably appropriately rated based on those ratings, but it's definitely underseen because I think there's almost certainly an audience out there for people who like this sort of gentle comedy, slice of life film. Like we said, I think it's definitely underseen. I think people will like it. Ratings wise, maybe slightly higher than 6.6, but I think that's around the ballpark. So I'm going to say it's appropriately rated, but it's definitely underseen, Kevin. So thank you very much for suggesting that one, and I hope it's the result that you wanted. We'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, if you'd like to get in touch with us, as I said at the start of the episode, it's filmsandthatpod@gmail.com. We're on all the social medias. If you've just searched Just Films and That on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, you'll find us. Give us a follow. We're always putting stuff out there. All that remains to be said is thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next week. Goodbye from me. Cheerio.